January 14th, 1983. A forest on the German border. The snow does not fall. It moves horizontally, a solid white wall driven by a furious wind. Visibility is zero. Temperature is a physical blow. Nothing is supposed to fly in this. Nothing human, at least. Inside the P-18 radar van, the air is thick with the smell of wet wool, stale tobacco, and hot vacuum tubes. Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov stares at the circular green scope, his eyes tracing the lazy sweep of the beam. For 6 hours, the screen has shown nothing but noise. Snow clutter. A blizzard of electronic ghosts that his operators are trained to ignore. It is a night for ghosts. His unit is part of the densest air defense network ever constructed by man. A layered shield of steel and radiation, overlapping fields of fire from hundreds of missile batteries and radar posts. It is a physical manifestation of a national paranoia, a guarantee that nothing could cross the border unannounced. The West had their fancy, delicate jets. The Union had this brutal, redundant, all-weather wall. It was a source of immense pride. It was considered perfect. The perfection breaks at 2:17 a.m. A single, solid green blip appears on the scope. It is not a ghost. It is too sharp, too consistent. It pulses with a malevolent steadiness. Volkov leans forward, his chair groaning in protest. Report, he snaps, his voice cutting through the hum of the electronics. A young conscript, his face pale in the green glow, swallows hard. Contact, Comrade Senior Lieutenant. Bearing 079er. Range, 40 kilometers. Altitude, unknown. It is too low. Too low is an understatement. The P-18 is a long-wave VHF radar, a magnificent brute designed to detect high-flying bombers and fighters long before they became a threat. It sees over the horizon, but it is blind to things that hug the Earth. For a contact to be this clear, it had to have some altitude. Yet the height-finding radar coupled to their system shows nothing. An empty sky. It is ground clutter, Volkov says, more to himself than to the crew. A truck on a distant highway. A freak atmospheric condition. It has to be. It is moving, Comrade Senior Lieutenant. The operator whispers. Speed, 180 knots. It is tracking east. Directly toward us. Volkov's blood runs cold. 180 knots is not a truck. It is the speed of a helicopter. A helicopter flying in a blizzard, at night, at an altitude so low their height finders cannot get a lock. It is impossible. Their own elite helicopter pilots were grounded, huddled in their barracks, told that any attempt to fly in this maelstrom was suicide. The laws of aerodynamics and human endurance did not simply cease to exist for the enemy. He watches the blip. It does not fly in a straight line like a normal aircraft. It weaves. It dances. The track on the plotting board looks like the path of a drunken man, zigging and zagging with no apparent logic. Yet it maintains its speed, its inexorable advance eastward. It is following the terrain, following it with a precision that no human pilot could manage in broad daylight, let alone in this white hell. It moves like a hawk trying to catch a rat in a burrow, hugging every contour of the land. It is following the Fulda River Valley. The plotter murmurs, his voice a mixture of awe and terror. He is tracing the contact's path on a paper map with a grease pencil. The erratic line of the blip perfectly matches the winding curves of the valley drawn on the map. To do that, the pilot would need to see the ground. But there is nothing to see, only snow. Panic begins to curdle in Volkov's stomach. This is not an aircraft. It is a violation. It moves with a purpose that is both intelligent and deeply unnatural. He grabs the handset to report up the chain of command to the regimental headquarters. His thumb hovers over the transmit button. What does he say? That a ghost is skating across his screen? That an enemy has mastered the weather itself? The blip is now 20 kilometers out. It should be screamingly loud on their other, shorter-range radars. But they see nothing. Only the old, reliable P-18, the long-wave dinosaur, can see this phantom. It is as if the aircraft is deliberately taunting them, visible only to the system least able to guide a weapon against it. At 10 kilometers, the blip abruptly turns 90 degrees north. It accelerates, 200 knots. It skirts the edge of their missile engagement zone with contemptuous ease. It is playing with them. It knows where they are. It knows their capabilities. It knows their weaknesses. Then, At 2:28 a.m., it vanishes. Not a fade, but a sudden, complete disappearance. One moment the solid green dot is there, a beacon of impossibility on his screen. The next, only the swirling static of the storm remains. It did not climb. It did not crash. It was simply gone. The room is a tomb. The operators stare at the empty screen, their faces slack with disbelief. The young conscript looks at Volkov, his eyes wide with a question that hangs unspoken in the thick air. What is it? Volkov has no answer. He only has a profound, sickening certainty. They were wrong. They were profoundly, dangerously, and completely wrong about the perfection of their wall. Something was out there in the dark, and it did not obey the rules. The report from Senior Lieutenant Volkov's outpost is a stone dropped into the placid pond of the main directorate. At first, it causes only ripples of annoyance. A ghost on a screen during a blizzard? It is dismissed as operator fatigue. Equipment malfunction, a known atmospheric anomaly common in severe weather. The initial response from the regional command is a terse reprimand for filing a sensationalist and unsubstantiated report. Volkov is ordered to have his equipment recalibrated. A week later, another report arrives. From a different sector, 100 kilometers to the south. Different crew, different radar set. But the story is identical. A low-level contact, moving at helicopter speed, in weather that grounds all known aircraft. It weaves through mountainous terrain with impossible precision. It lingers just outside of missile range. And then it vanishes. This time, the report is not dismissed. It is flagged. 2 identical anomalies are a coincidence. 3, a week after that, from a post near the northern coast, are a pattern. The reports are compiled, cross-referenced, and sent up the chain of command with an urgent classification. The ripples of annoyance become waves of concern. By the 5th incident, the waves are a tsunami of strategic panic crashing against the walls of the high command in Moscow. The problem is not the aircraft itself. An enemy helicopter, even a very advanced one, is a tactical issue. The problem is what its existence signifies. The entire air defense doctrine of the Warsaw Pact is predicated on a simple, brutalist philosophy: defense in depth. A multi-layered, overlapping system of radars and missiles designed to detect and destroy intruders as they approach from high and medium altitudes. The whole architecture is built like a fortress wall, facing outward and upward. This phantom, this ghost, does not try to smash the wall. It does not try to fly over it. It slips underneath it. It operates in a domain they had considered a safe zone, a natural barrier, the weather. Their own operational manuals were clear. In conditions of zero visibility, heavy precipitation, and extreme low-altitude flight, the primary defense was the ground itself. Physics was their ally. Any pilot foolish enough to attempt such a flight profile would become a crater in a hillside long before they became a threat. But this enemy flies as if physics is a minor inconvenience. It treats a blizzard as a cloak. It uses treacherous terrain as a shield. The very things that were supposed to protect the Union's flank are now the enemy's preferred hunting ground. This single, inexplicable capability invalidates decades of investment, training, and strategic planning. The fortress wall, they are beginning to realize, has no foundation. An enemy can crawl right under the front door. The geopolitical implications are terrifying. The core of the Union's military power in Europe is its massive armored formations. Tens of thousands of tanks and armored vehicles, poised to roll west. Their greatest vulnerability? Command and control bunkers, supply depots, key bridges. All of these are high-value targets located just behind the front lines. The entire offensive doctrine relies on protecting these assets from enemy air power in the opening hours of a conflict. Now, they are confronted with a weapon that can seemingly appear out of nowhere, in any weather, and strike these vital nodes with impunity. How do you protect a command bunker from an enemy that can fly up a river valley at night, in a snowstorm, completely undetected by the radars tasked with protecting that very bunker? You cannot. The entire operational plan for a war in Europe is suddenly threatened. The armored spear is formidable, but this new threat is a poison that can be injected directly into its heart, paralyzing it before the battle even begins. Fear begins to metastasize down the chain of command. On the front lines, the stories spread. evolving from technical reports into whispered myths around smoky stoves. The crews call it the Prizrak, the ghost. Some say it is a drone, an unfeeling machine. Others insist it must have a new kind of optical system that can see through snow. The most fantastic rumors claim the pilots are psychic, products of a secret Western parapsychology program, guiding their machines with the power of their minds. This mythology is more corrosive than any weapon. It breeds a sense of helplessness. The radar operators, once proud guardians of the sky, now feel like children staring into the dark, afraid of a monster they cannot see or understand. They begin to second-guess their instruments. Every flicker of static, every ghost of clutter, could be it. The psychological pressure is immense. The machine is no longer just a threat. It is an object of superstition, a technological demon haunting the forests of Central Europe. The High Command in Moscow does not deal in superstitions, but it understands the corrosive effect of fear. The ghost must be explained. It must be understood. It must be killed. The order comes down from the highest level of the Ministry of Defense. A special commission is formed. It is a grim assembly of the Union's best minds, leading radar engineers from the research institutes, seasoned air defense generals, top intelligence analysts from the main directorate, and even aerodynamicists from the most prestigious design bureaus. Their mandate is simple and absolute: find the ghost. Their first act is to seize all relevant data. Radar tapes, operator logs, and transcripts of panicked radio calls are collected from every post that has reported a contact. The commission members gather in a lead-lined room, the air thick with cigarette smoke, and begin to sift through the evidence. The picture that emerges is not merely confusing. It is fundamentally contradictory. The radar tapes are the most maddening. The contacts appear only on the old P-18 VHF sets. The newer, more sophisticated microwave radars, the very systems designed for tracking low-flying targets, see nothing at all. This makes no sense. It is a technological regression. It is like an enemy appearing only in a black and white photograph, but being invisible to a high-definition video camera. The engineers hypothesize that the aircraft must have a special absorbent coating that is only effective against higher-frequency radar bands. It is a plausible theory, but it feels incomplete. Next, they debrief the witnesses. The radar operators are brought in one by one. They are good soldiers, not prone to fantasy. Yet their testimony sounds like science fiction. They speak of the contact's movement, its unnatural agility. It did not fly like a machine. One senior lieutenant insists, his hands trembling slightly. It moved like an insect. It anticipated the terrain before it got there. Another describes how the contact appeared to hover motionless for seconds at a time, hidden in the radar shadow of a hill, only to burst out at high speed. This is a feat of airmanship that borders on the supernatural, especially in zero visibility. The commission dismisses much of it as battlefield stress, the embellishments of terrified men. The search for physical evidence turns up nothing. Special teams are scrambled after every sighting, sweeping the supposed flight paths for any sign of wreckage. They find nothing. No crashed helicopters. No discarded fuel pods. Not a single bolt or rivet. The ghost is as immaterial as its name suggests. This lack of evidence is, in itself, terrifying. It implies a level of mechanical reliability that is simply unheard of. Everyone has accidents, especially when operating at the edge of the performance envelope. But this enemy, it seems, does not. Frustrated, the commission turns to its own resources. They order the Union's most elite Special Forces helicopter regiment to attempt to replicate the Ghost's flight profiles. The pilots are the best of the best, heroes of the Union, masters of their heavily armed, rugged machines. They are given the radar tracks from the sightings and told to fly them. The results are catastrophic. The first attempt is made in clear daylight. The pilot, a decorated major, successfully follows the winding river valley path for 8 minutes before a slight misjudgment in a turn clips his rotor against a cliff face. The machine explodes in a ball of fire. The second attempt is made at dusk, in light rain. The pilot, more cautious, flies slower. He manages to stay airborne, but his flight path is a clumsy approximation of the Ghost's fluid, high-speed track. He reports that flying that close to the terrain requires a level of concentration that is physically unsustainable for more than a few minutes. To do it at night, in a blizzard, is not a matter of skill. It is a physical impossibility. The human eye and brain cannot process the information fast enough. The mystery only deepens. The evidence does not add up. The ghost is visible only to old radars. It is flown by pilots with seemingly superhuman abilities, and it is mechanically infallible. It leaves no trace. The Commission is trapped in a loop of contradictions. Every piece of data they gather makes the phenomenon seem less like a product of conventional engineering and more like something from another world. The hunt for answers has become a hunt for a phantom, and the investigators are beginning to feel like they are the ones being haunted. They have data, they have witnesses, they have the best minds in the country. But they are no closer to an answer than the terrified conscript staring at a ghost on a green screen. In the sterile, smoke-filled analysis rooms, the Special Commission is under immense pressure to provide an explanation. An unknown variable is intolerable to the rigid, deterministic worldview of the Soviet military machine. Every problem must have a material solution. So they begin to build theories, attempting to force the strange, contradictory data into the familiar shapes of their own technological understanding. They are looking for a weapon, a device, a single piece of hardware they can understand, quantify, and ultimately, copy. They are searching for a magic bullet. The first major theory, championed by the radar engineers, revolves around a new form of stealth. They hypothesize that the ghost is a conventional helicopter airframe coated in a revolutionary radar-absorbent material. This material, they argue, is specifically designed to defeat modern microwave frequency engagement radars. Its chemical composition, however, has a flaw. It is ineffective against the long-wavelength VHF signals of the older P-18 search radars. This explains why only the old sets can see it. It is an elegant theory. It fits most of the facts. It is also completely wrong. It assumes the goal of the enemy is invisibility, when in fact, the true advantage lies elsewhere. But the Commission clings to this idea, as it is familiar. Stealth is a concept they understand. The second dominant theory comes from the intelligence analysts. They propose the ghost is not a helicopter at all. It is, they suggest, a new type of subsonic cruise missile. A terrain-hugging missile with an advanced guidance system that allows it to follow geographical features with unprecedented precision. The helicopter-like speed and movement patterns are a deliberate deception, a sophisticated electronic warfare trick designed to confuse their defenses into thinking they are dealing with a manned aircraft. This theory accounts for the mechanical perfection and lack of wreckage. A missile is a one-way trip, and its debris would be at its target, not along its flight path. This theory is also logical, compelling, and profoundly incorrect. It mistakes the effect for the cause. A third, more exotic theory bubbles up from the fringes of the aeronautical design bureaus. Perhaps the breakthrough is not in materials or electronics, but in human biology. Whispers circulate about secret Western programs in bioenhancement. They speculate that the pilots of the ghost are not ordinary men. They are augmented, fed a cocktail of psychostimulant drugs that grant them hyper-awareness, faster reflexes, and an inhuman tolerance for stress and fatigue. Or perhaps, they are directly wired into their machines, a crude but effective brain-computer interface that allows them to fly by instinct, to feel the terrain around them, as if it were an extension of their own body. This theory, born of a mixture of fear and a grudging respect, is the closest to the truth in one sense. It correctly identifies the man-machine interface as a key problem. But its conclusion, that the solution is to upgrade the man, is a mirror image of the actual answer. From these flawed theories, a series of futile and often tragic countermeasures are born. To combat the suspected stealth coding, research institutes are ordered on a crash program to develop new microwave radars that operate on wider frequency bands, hoping to find a window in the material's absorbent properties. This diverts enormous resources into a technological dead end. New missile batteries are deployed with modified guidance systems, programmed to ignore targets moving below a certain speed, a filter designed to weed out the decoy helicopters and focus on faster-moving jets. This, in practice, simply makes them blind to the very threat they are supposed to be countering. Operational orders are issued to the air defense crews. They are instructed to treat any slow-moving, low-level contact detected only on VHF radar as a top priority threat. Interceptor jets are scrambled, roaring into the stormy skies to hunt for an enemy they cannot see on their own radars. The pilots are sent on suicide missions, vectored towards a location in space based on the vague, imprecise data of a ground-based search radar. They fly into mountainsides. They fly into the ground. They burn fuel and hours searching for a ghost, their frustration mounting with every failed sortie. The countermeasures are not only ineffective, they are making the situation worse, sowing confusion and causing more friendly casualties than the enemy ever could. The core of their failure is the magic bullet fallacy. The Commission is composed of brilliant men, but they are products of a system that thinks in terms of objects, not processes. They see the world as a collection of things. A better tank has thicker armor and a bigger gun. A better jet flies higher and faster. Therefore, a better helicopter must have a magical skin, or a magical engine, or a magical pilot. They cannot conceive that the enemy's advantage might not be a single object at all. They cannot imagine that the ghost is not a thing, but a system, a philosophy, an entirely new way of integrating man, machine, and information. Their search for a single, revolutionary piece of hardware blinds them to the much more terrifying truth. The revolution is in the logic that binds the hardware together. They are bringing a knife to a gunfight, and they are busy trying to figure out what kind of exotic metal the blade is made from. While the Special Commission in Moscow chases phantoms, the answer to their mystery is being assembled in a brightly lit, climate-controlled facility in the American Midwest. There are no generals here, no intelligence analysts, only engineers in short-sleeved shirts, hunched over drafting tables and humming computer terminals. The air smells not of smoke, but of solder and cleanroom solvents. They are not building a weapon. They are solving a problem. The problem was born a generation earlier, in the mud and blood of Vietnam. Helicopter pilots there flew low and fast to avoid enemy fire, but they were limited by what they could see. At night, or in bad weather, they were effectively grounded. The mission, inserting and extracting special operations forces from deep behind enemy lines, demanded an all-weather, day-or-night capability. A pilot could not rescue a downed airman only on a sunny afternoon. The need was absolute. To own the night, to own the weather. The early attempts were crude. Pilots flew with primitive night vision goggles, which amplified ambient light but were useless in total darkness or fog. They relied on their own skill and memory of the terrain, a recipe for disaster. The casualty rate from simple, weather-related crashes was appalling. It became clear that the human pilot, no matter how skilled or brave, was the limiting factor. The human eye could not see through rain. The human brain could not build a three-dimensional map of the world in real time from a torrent of conflicting sensory data. The solution was not to demand the impossible from the pilot. The solution was to build a machine that could see for him. The core innovation was not a single invention. It was the painstaking, methodical integration of 4 distinct technologies into a single, cohesive organism. The first was a new kind of radar. Not a search radar for finding other aircraft, but a small, pencil beam emitter mounted in the helicopter's nose. This was a terrain-following radar. It did not look up. It looked forward and down, painting a high-resolution, 3-dimensional picture of the ground ahead. It could see every hill, every tree, every power line, even through the thickest rain or snow. It was the machine's eye. The second piece was a forward-looking infrared FLIR turret. This was a heat-detecting camera, capable of seeing the world as a thermal landscape. A warm river would glow against a cold field. A running truck engine would shine like a star. The FLIR could see through darkness, smoke, and haze, providing a visual reference that complemented the radar's sterile, geometric data. It was the machine's second eye, seeing in a different spectrum. The third piece was a suite of navigation tools. A highly accurate inertial navigation system, a box of gyroscopes and accelerometers, kept track of the helicopter's every movement, allowing it to know its precise location without any external signals. This was coupled with a Doppler radar that measured speed over the ground. Together, they formed the machine's sense of balance and position. But the true revolution, the component that the Soviet Commission could never guess at, was the fourth piece, the central processing computer. It was a digital brain. This box, filled with microchips of a density and complexity that the Soviet industrial base could not hope to replicate, was the heart of the system. Its sole purpose was to take the data streams from the radar, the FLIR, and the navigation system and fuse them together. It took the radar's 3D map, the FLIR's thermal image, and the navigator's precise coordinates, and it synthesized them into a single, simple picture of the world. This is what demystified the Ghost. The pilot was not flying in a blizzard. He was not a superhuman with psychic powers. He was, in effect, playing a video game. On a screen in his darkened cockpit, the computer projected a simple, intuitive display. A green, holographic-like tunnel was superimposed over the view of the outside world. This tunnel represented a safe flight path, calculated by the computer in real time based on the terrain following radar's data. The pilot's only job was to keep the helicopter inside the computer-generated tunnel. He did not need to see the mountain. The computer saw the mountain and drew the tunnel to go around it. He did not need to see the river valley. The computer saw the valley and laid the tunnel down the middle of it. The system gave the machine agency. The box did the work. The pilot was no longer a daredevil, relying on instinct and luck. He was a systems manager, monitoring the flow of information and making tactical decisions. The relentless cognitive load of low-level, zero-visibility flight was lifted from his shoulders and placed onto the silicon chips of the central computer. This was the source of the unnatural precision the Soviet operators had witnessed. It was unnatural. It was the precision of a machine, executing complex calculations millions of times a second. It was the source of the infallible reliability. The system had backups for its backups. It was designed to fail gracefully, not catastrophically. The true magic bullet was not a piece of hardware. It was a piece of software, a philosophy of data fusion and human-machine collaboration that the Soviets, with their top-down, centralized mindset, had not even begun to explore. They were looking for a better muscle. The West had built a better brain. For years, the Ghost remains a phantom. The Special Commission is eventually disbanded. Its final report a thick volume of inconclusive theories and unanswered questions. The myth of the all-weather invader becomes an accepted, if terrifying, part of life on the front line. Then, in the mid-1980s, during a clandestine operation in a dusty, mountainous country far to the south, the impossible happens. One of the machines makes a hard landing due to a mechanical failure. The crew is rescued, but the helicopter itself, damaged but largely intact, is abandoned. Within hours, it is in the hands of Soviet special forces. The news electrifies the high command. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. They have it. They have finally captured the magic bullet. The helicopter is carefully disassembled and flown to a top-secret research institute outside Moscow. The Union's best engineers and scientists descend upon the prize like vultures. The mood is ecstatic. Now they will learn the secret. Now they will turn the enemy's weapon against them. The initial shock comes when they begin to peel back the skin of the machine. They find no revolutionary new material. The airframe is made of conventional aluminum alloys. The rotor blades are a familiar composite. There is no stealth coating. The first and most dominant of their theories evaporates under the harsh lights of the hangar. The machine's invisibility to their microwave radars was not due to a special skin, but something far more mundane, its flight path. By flying so low, hugging the terrain, it was simply staying below the radar horizon of most of their systems. It was not invisible, it was just well hidden. The second shock comes when they dissect the electronics. The sheer density and precision of the components are breathtaking. The wiring harnesses are works of art, each cable perfectly routed and shielded. The circuit boards are packed with microchips so small and complex that the engineers have to use microscopes to examine them. This is not the crude, robust electronics they are used to. This is jewelry. They realize with a sickening feeling that their own manufacturing base, with its emphasis on mass production and loose tolerances, is incapable of producing components to this standard. The industrial gap is not a gap, it is a chasm. The deepest shock, the one that truly breaks their spirit, comes when they analyze the central computer and the nose-mounted radar. This is the heart of the Ghost. This is the source of its power. They carefully reverse-engineer the hardware, component by component. An order comes down from the very top of the Politburo, a furious, desperate command. Copy it. Screw for screw. The attempt is a humiliating disaster. The nation's finest electronics plants are retooled to produce clones of the Western microchips. The results are crude copies with a failure rate of over 90%. The few chips that do work are slower and generate more heat than the originals. They manage to build a copy of the terrain-following radar, but when they test it, the beam is unstable. It provides a flickering, distorted image of the terrain ahead, filled with noise and false echoes. It is unusable. They build a clone of the central computer, using their inferior chips and hand-soldered circuit boards. They power it up. It fails to boot. They try again. It gives them streams of garbage data. They spend months trying to debug it, but they are working in the dark. They have copied the physical hardware, the body, but they do not have the software, the ghost in the machine. The complex algorithms and lines of code that fuse the sensor data into a coherent picture were not something they could reverse engineer from a silicon chip. They had the vessel, but not the soul. The truth finally dawns on them in that cold, sterile hangar. It is a moment of profound, professional, and national humiliation. The enemy's advantage was not one thing. It was everything. It was the ability to manufacture a perfect gyroscope. It was the software that could calculate a flight path in milliseconds. It was the design philosophy that trusted a computer to fly the aircraft. It was an entire ecosystem of innovation, from materials science to computer programming, that they could not replicate. They had thought they were in a race to build a better sword, only to find the enemy had invented the firearm, and they did not even have the ability to manufacture gunpowder. The order to copy it was the desperate cry of a system that had mistaken imitation for innovation, and in doing so, had revealed its own terminal decline. The final scorecard is brutal. It is written not in a single battle, but in 1,000 moments of quiet, unchallenged dominance. In military exercises, the machines slip through the most heavily defended sectors as if they are not there. In covert operations, they deliver and extract teams with impunity, appearing and disappearing from radar screens at will, leaving behind only confused sentries and the cold wind. The kill ratio is, for all practical purposes, infinite to zero. They are never caught, never shot down. They are a force that operates on a different physical and technological plane. This one helicopter, this one integrated system, becomes a symptom of a much larger disease. Its capture and the failed attempt to replicate it serve as a stark, internal audit of the Soviet system's health. The verdict is terminal. The command economy, with its 5-year plans and its focus on massive, brute force industrial output, had proven masterful at producing vast quantities of steel. It could build thousands of simple, rugged tanks and artillery pieces. But it could not build a microchip. It could not foster the decentralized, creative, and precise ecosystem required for the information age. The microchip had defeated the smokestack. The failure was not in the courage of their soldiers or the genius of their top-level scientists. It was systemic. A system that distrusted individual initiative could not empower a pilot by giving him a smart co-pilot in a box. A system that prioritized quantity over quality could not manufacture the high-tolerance components needed for advanced electronics. A system that compartmentalized knowledge, fearing espionage, could not achieve the cross-disciplinary integration of radar, software, and aeronautical engineers that made the Ghost possible. They had built a wall to keep the enemy out, but the real enemy was their own internal friction, their own inability to adapt. The legacy of this technological shock echoes for decades. It forces a painful reevaluation of military doctrine across the globe. The concept of information dominance, of seeing the battlefield while remaining unseen, supplants the old calculus of mass and firepower. The Ghost and its descendants changed the very geometry of warfare. No longer is the front line a neat demarcation on a map. With the ability to penetrate airspace at will, in any weather, the battlefield becomes three-dimensional, and every point behind the lines is now the front line. The story of the Ghost is not the story of a helicopter. It is the story of two competing philosophies of power played out in the snow-swept forests of a divided Europe. One side believed power came from mass, from control, from centralized command. The other was beginning to understand that true power came from information, from integration, from empowering the individual at the edge of the network. One system could order 1 million men to march in lockstep. The other could build a box that allowed one man to fly through a storm. In the end, the storm came for everyone, but only one of them knew how to navigate it.